Good morning, and thank you to everyone for joining us as we unpack the topic of technology in policing. My name is Sibiha Matala, Project Coordinator at Corruption Watch, and I'm joined by Melusi Ngala, who is our lead researcher. Corruption Watch is a non-profit organization launched in 2012. We rely on the public to report incidents of corruption to us, and we use those reports as an important source of information to fight corruption in South Africa and hold our leaders accountable. To date, we've received around 30,000 reports of corruption from across the country. We use these reports to identify trends and hotspots, building advocacy and public awareness campaigns based on these trends. We also investigate, select reports, and do strategic litigation. For the past couple of years, police corruption has been the sector for which Corruption Watch receives the most reports. Especially since the publication of our Corruption in Uniform report in 2019, we've come to learn of even more incidents of police corruption, which is reflected in the data sets we publish in our annual reports and analysis of corruption trends reports. Corruption in policing services has unfortunately diminished public trust and confidence in the institution. Corruption Watch won a grant through the Google Impact Challenge to develop an online tool which promotes transparency and accountability in policing in South Africa. Here's a quick video to demonstrate what the tool does.
How do we combat corruption in our country, especially when the very institutions that are mandated to do so are themselves corrupt? The cruel history of policing in our republic has creeped its way into the modern day. This has reduced public confidence in policing and tarnished the courageous work of those who risk their lives on a daily basis to make our country safe. We realize there's no easy solution or a quick fix. But in difficult times, innovation takes place. We at Corruption Watch have taken the stand. We are committed to exposing corruption and empowering the public. We have created an online tool that allows you to access locations, budgets, and personnel of any police station in the country. You can also rate your police station and even nominate ethical cops. Importantly, you can report any form of police corruption using the tool. We, the people, need transparency. We are taking back our power. We can effect change. Together, let's re-hero, unjojo, untaint, unbribe, re-salute, and de-force our police service. Check out the new groundbreaking Veza online tool on corruptionwatch.org.za. Change is literally in the palm of our hands.
Since the launch of the tool in February 2021, we've had over 10,000 visitors to the site, over 450 ratings and reviews of police stations, over 30 nominations of ethical cops, and 107 whistleblower reports. The Veza tool is a recognition of the possibility of including innovative technology in our approach to anti-corruption and to social justice in general. Technology is a powerful tool with dangerous power that we should critique, but also limitless potential that we can harness to promote good governance and accountability, which are key pillars in our democracy. Today, we broaden that conversation about how technology can be used to improve safety, security, and policing in our communities. Just a reminder to everyone that a recording of this webinar will be available to all those who have registered. It will also be uploaded onto YouTube later today. Please do use the chat function to ask any questions which we will pose to the panelists after the discussion. Over to you, Melusi.
Good morning, everyone, and joining us for this very important discussion from the Memeza Community Safety is the Chief Operating Officer, Elmarie Pereira, and from the Civilian Secretariat for Police is the Director for Policy Development and Analysis, Mothupi Mafologela. They'll be the ones joining us in conversation today. And prior to us actually getting to the nitty-gritty of how technology is being used for policing, I would give them an opportunity to actually introduce themselves and to tell us a little bit about their organizations. First of all, let's give Elmarie the opportunity to tell us about Memeza Community Center, Safety.
Thank you so much, Malusi, and thank you so much for Corruption Watch for organizing this very important discussion. My name is Elmarie. I'm from Memeza Child Crime Prevention, and the problem that we address through technology is brought on obviously by the ever increasing crime, but specifically looking at informal settlements and townships. Before I go into telling you more about us, I would like to show you a short video that will take you into the heart of Diepsloot and how the technology helps improve service delivery from a SAPS and community policing point of view and the lives of ordinary South Africans. If you could play the video for us, please.
Memeza is a community-based crime prevention
initiative that was started out of anger, out of sadness, out of pain. It was after I had been a repeat crime victim. It's like a random. Ke tla ke ra Memeza tsone di tsena vele di jamba di ya kwalo kwa di tsone di tsena vele di jamba ne wa ka next door mando wa khona umfonela re ne wa ka next door mando wa khona umfonela press alarm press alarm me thomare ba bale press alarm me thomare mapodisa ala when they press the alarm it comes straight to our cell phones. When they press the alarm, name and the house number. So it's easy for us to find the street name and the house number. So it's easy for us to find where the community is and respond as soon as possible.
Thank you so much. You can go back to the presentation. Wonderful. So the problem we solve is linked to crime, obviously, and our focus area is linked to those who don't have access to the private security industry. 25% of our population lives in informal settlements, with more than 85% of these having been victims of crime. However, only 5% of these people have actual access to private security. So we need to assist our public partners, SAPS, community policing forums, to solve this problem. When we started working with SAPS in 2012 to develop the community alarm system, SAPS clarified why they thought at that time technology could help them and the community where there is the highest rates of crimes. The problems identified by SAPS at that time were, in summary, one, that private security was not active in informal settlements and townships as much as it is in other neighborhoods. SAPS felt that they were being reactive and only responding to crime after the fact. And then a very practical point is that a lot of the victims and people do not have airtime to phone 10111 to ask for help. So they were looking for a solution, a technology-driven solution that would link SAPS, community policing forums, with the South African police services. The solution that was developed with SAPS and Center for Public Service Innovation and the Secretariat for Police included technology innovation, but it also looked at process innovation. On the process innovation side, to improve SAPS and CPF response times, and the technology innovation was to provide these communities with government-endorsed, locally produced, easy-to-use, affordable security technologies that will link the whole community together and provide a structured way to link to SAPS. Working through public-private partnerships involving communities directly, great results have been seen. Through various pilots and projects, we've proven that technology can reduce, firstly, gender-based violence by 67% and improve SAPS and community policing forums response times to between 7 to 12 minutes. On the educational front, we are working with over 200 schools using technology to monitor and protect educational ICT. As we know, during lockdown last year, over 1,000 schools were burglared and educational ICT stolen. So we work very closely with institutions such as the Civilian Secretariat for Police, Business Against Crime, the Eyes and Ears Project, to provide a differentiated response model linked to technology. And we have proven that this model reduces theft of educational ICT by 98%. All of this is done and possible through working together, a private partnership approach with technology as the facilitator. Another lesson we learned is that one technology cannot fix all problems. In our approach, we have diversified to ensure that we have technology and process innovation that looks at all areas of crime at a community level. So this will include household crime, safety of women when they're walking around or going to work, as well as how we can protect educational ICT, small businesses, and all of this done through proactivation technology that alert SAPS and response partners prior to a crime happening that trouble is on the way. So the safety solution that Memeza brings to South Africa through technology is very different. We help connect and mobilize communities through proactivation technology. And through this, we help empower SAPS and CPF to respond quicker. But very importantly, we also put the power back into communities' hands. The problem is too large to just leave it to the public sector to solve. We need to empower communities to take their safety into their own hands. We work through public-private partnerships, and this is a key importance to the model. And we deploy these specialized delivery models to bring technology to all South Africans, not only those that can afford a private security response. In a nutshell, that's what we as Memeza bring. And back to you, Melusi.
Mothupi, can you please tell us a little bit about the Civilian Secretariat for Police and the kind of work that you do there? Your audio is not transmitting. Please unmute yourself.
My apologies,
there we go.
Melusi. Okay, thank you. Good morning, Melusi, and to the panelists, and good morning to those who have joined the platform. The Civilian Secretariat for Police Service, it's a government institution created through Section 208 of the Constitution to operate and function under the direction of the Minister of Police. It's more about the playing an oversight role over the work of the police in support of the political responsibilities of the Minister of Police. Amongst others, we develop policy or policing policy that guides the manner in which policing has to be taken in a democratic society. So we also then have partnerships. I think even the previous speaker highlighted in terms of partnerships. So we have partnerships that is more about bringing on board all stakeholders in respect of the fight against crime. Then we also have our M&E and legislation. Those are some of the core functions that this department is to do. So I would, in my input to this discussion, I will focus more in respect of the core questions that were posed in respect of the use of technology in improving policing. One would remember that even the NDP advocates for an integrated criminal justice system, and amongst others, is actually establishing an integrated and seamless national criminal justice system, information and technology database and systems. And those are just amongst the key priorities upon which the NDP calls on the stakeholders within the criminal justice system to be integrated in terms of the systems that they use to investigate and also then prosecute criminal behavior. And would know that even in terms of the globalization poses exposure to sophisticated international criminal networks and cybercrimes. And that requires a very concerted effort in terms of how we invest in the technology space. The white paper 2016 on policing also made emphasis in relation to the use of technology to support proactive policing. And you'll also then note that the International Association of Chiefs of Police in 2014 also recognized the fact that technology plays an increasingly crucial role in the daily work of the police. And that is mainly in respect of making sure that police are safer and also the community are safer. They are better informed and also effective in terms of reducing, effective in terms of the execution of their policing responsibilities. Now, one of the questions that has been posed to us was that how can technology improve policing? We know that there's just too much paperwork that goes through the criminal process from the police up to the courts. So it will also then reduce the paper-based communication, which is more time-consuming. You have real-time recording of and access to data and information. I mean, if you look in terms of the video surveillance systems, for instance, the AVLs that the police use, the fingerprint systems that they use, amongst others, those provide real-time information that can then improve decision-making. There would be interactive information sharing at a high speed. It improves timely decision-making, and it provides an opportunity to record both visual and also audio evidence. One of the fundamental things about the use of technology is that it has the potential to increase police-citizen trust, but that it's also in the context of the fact that if the community trusts the police, then it is highly likely that communities will be open to accept that the police can use technology to do their work. And this is also in the context of the fact that it has the potential to infringe on the civil rights of the citizenry. Now, how do we think that technology can prevent police corruption? The fact is that with the use of technology, there would always be a trail of police activities, either real time or in passive mode, that can be easily recorded, traced, and monitored. And I referred earlier to some of the surveillance technologies that exist in the market. And also, for instance, the dash and body cameras and the CCTVs that we have, and the monitoring of the system that is used to monitor police vehicles. Those are some of the issues or technologies or softwares that can be used. The access to technology systems are built with security protocols with access codes. So anyone who uses technologies can be traced in terms of what are the, who has had access to which information and how was that information used and for what purpose that information was used. And then we know that because of the need for auditing and of the IT system, through those processes, then it allows that if there is any malice or non-compliance in terms of the protocols or procedures in the police environment, then they'll be able to be detected, and then where a need arises, then accountability mechanism needs to be implemented. And we also aim that these technology systems in instruments has the capability to store data offshore. So even if the information is generated from one area, then it can be transferred to a location offsite of where the office of the premise is, so that should there be any infringement or should there be any security concerns, then there is already a backup that can also be traced. Now, what are the challenges that come with the use of technology? The integration, you remember that as part of change management, once you bring in the issue of technology, now the issue of change management comes into the space, and then the integration of the systems within the criminal justice system. One would have to be mindful of the fact that the police themselves are not working in silos. They are working within an integrated system. So whatever system that needs to be brought into the police has to be integrated with other systems within the criminal justice system. There is high capital costs and operational costs. the training cost that requires that personnel or police officers needs to be trained regularly in terms of the use of the technology, and also the fact that the extent to which, and I referred to this earlier, that the public trust the police will also then play a role in it's another challenge, because if there is an animosity between the police and the community, then there will be reluctance in terms of the extent to which police use technology effectively and efficiently. Because again, the violation of civil rights and privacy rights is also a contentious issue in this regard. Now, just some of the policy, and this will be towards the last slide, in terms of the policy framework. I indicated earlier that the International Association of the Chiefs of Police did develop a technology policy framework that would require every police agency, including the SAPs, to develop policies in their own space in terms of the deployment and use of technology to improve policing. At the Civilian Secretariat for Police Service, we also then developed the overarching policy framework on the use of technology to enhance policing. And we are currently finalizing the draft electronic policing policy, which we call e-policing policy. And this is actually also then to give effect, amongst others, to the International Association of Chiefs Policy, Technology Policy Framework, over and above the responsibility of the Minister of Police to determine policy in this regard. So SAPS is also then expected to develop operational policies and procedures to guide the deployment and use of the technology in terms, and also related aspects that will guide them in the execution of their policing function, while ensuring that we use technology as effectively as possible. And all these things need to be aligned to the vision and strategy and policing priorities of the country. So in order to derive value in terms of the use of technology, there needs to be proper planning, implementation, training, and development, amongst others. And this requires an innovative thinking around the people responsible to make decisions and execute those decisions. We need to take note of the fact that there have been some notable technological or modernization of the policing through the use of technology. There are a variety of systems that the SAPS is currently using to improve policing. Amongst those are the automated vehicle location system, you have the automated ballistic identification system, you have the case administration system, you have the property control and exhibit management system, and also the automated fingerprint identification system. So I'm just mentioning those few ones, but there are many others that actually technological advancement and softwares and systems that SAPS uses. But we do note the fact that there is still more to be done, especially considering the fact that technology is growing rapidly. And therefore, then policing will also have to ensure that the systems or technology systems that they use are also then kept abreast as new technology comes in. So I will stop there in terms of my input. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that, Mothupi, for that input. Just to bring you into the discussion, Elmarie, I just want to ask you, can you please share a little bit of anecdotal stories, evidence about how technology has been used in communities, and how has this actually changed the relationship between communities and police structures?
Definitely. Thanks so much, Malusi. So since 2012, we've been at it. And, you know, in 2014, when we did the first pilot of the community policing alarm in Diepsloot, Diepsloot was at that stage chosen because it was the highest crime area and chosen by the police. And what we saw out of that pilot was the simple fact that a piece of technology in one home with the press of the button can inform not only SAPS, because we know SAPS is stretched as it is, but can inform family, friends and neighbors and the community policing forums that plays a very important part in community safety. made a significant difference in the lowering of crime in and around the households where that technology is installed. And what we also saw was that, one piece of technology in one household almost becomes like a small police station, if I can call it that, where community members can contact that household if they are in trouble to actually call the police. So what we saw there, if I can give you from an evidence point of view, is we installed 600 community alarm systems in households that was identified in Diepsloot that was previous victims of crime, gender-based violence, so they were already at risk. It wasn't only households, it was small businesses and schools. That pilot ran for a year. And with the national statistics that came out at the end of 2014, there was a 67% reduction in gender-based violence in Diepsloot, a 9% murder reduction in Diepsloot. And we also saw, just looking at the households and small businesses and schools where we installed the alarm, that we could see a definite shift of crime moving to other areas. So it means that firstly, the technology, obviously the fact that it can very, very quickly notify a lot of people that you're in trouble or that something is happening, scares off criminals. And secondly, the fact that the response time is now so quick, because it's now not only reliant on SAPS anymore. Your closest community policing forum patroller knows that something is happening and he or she can respond. And your neighbors can make a noise to respond. So that is some of the evidence that we've gathered just from that one pilot. Now, since then, we've deployed pilots in all 9 provinces. And as I mentioned, from an education point of view, the real proof that we got that it also works protecting our educational ICT is that there was a big spate of the theft of smart boards and trackers, and specifically in vulnerable schools. So these are the schools that cannot really afford it. They get sponsored these items by corporates. So once it's stolen, corporates don't want to really sponsor it again. So what we found with a simple installation of a very affordable camera solution into the ICT lab where the items are kept, the introduction of a safe where laptops and tablets can be locked away, the implementation of trackers into some of these laptops and smart boards, including a very proactive monitoring center that, even based on sound, can alert response on sound that they receive from the technology that we installed, that alerts us that there is a banging on a door or somebody's trying to get through the roof. Them logging into the technology and actually have a visible view as to what's happening, and alerting SAPS and our private response partners proactively that we can hear or we can see that there's an active burglary happening, has made a significant difference. So through the combination of these technologies, we've seen a 98% reduction of ICT theft in the over 200 schools that we work with. So that's just some of the statistics.
And can you tell us a little bit, because we get many reports of corruption, as you know, and if anything, they indicate to a trust deficit between the public and police. And I was just wondering, have this technology altered in any way how people view the police, and specifically in these communities?
Definitely. And I think that was one of the things that we didn't probably expect, because you would have expected that now you're going to see bad response times. But what we've seen is that the relationship between the community has improved significantly with SAPS, where we've deployed the solution. So it does make a difference, and it brings the community closer to SAPS, because the community is also, as with the Corruption Watch app, able to notify the police if there's any, it doesn't have to be in their household, but whatever is happening in their community. So it really strengthens the communication channel between SAPS and the community. We've definitely seen an improvement in relationship and the view of the police. Definitely, yeah.
Sure. Mothupi, do you agree in terms of the changes? What have you observed from your perspective as the Civilian Secretariat for Police in terms of how technology has impacted the relationship between community members as well as members of the police services? Please.
Thank you. Yes. Look. Yes. Am I audible now?
Yes, you are. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you. Look. The reality is that there is still a challenge in respect of the extent to which the SAPS leverage on technology in the execution of its constitutional mandate. And as I highlighted before, as much as there have been some notable move by the SAPS to inculcate the use of technology in the policing space, you still have some challenges. For instance, if I may pick up on or link to what Elmarie has indicated, we know that the access, for instance, access to technological systems, especially at the rural area, is very skewed. And one of the things that contributes to that is actually in terms of the cost implications and the capital infrastructure, and of course some of the socioeconomic challenges that we have. And in that regard, as much as we have these technical systems in place or softwares, there is still a challenge in terms of the extent to which it reaches out to the people at the ground level, especially at the rural areas, which is why in order to augment that challenge, we have the community policing forums, which is the structure that gets instituted or established at the police station level as a lever between the police and the community, where there is that kind of engagement, and those structures get supported by government in terms of making sure that they execute those responsibilities, and making sure that the community do participate, even if in cases where they are not able to use the gadgets or technical instruments, then they are still able to engage with the police in terms of making sure that their needs or safety and security needs are catered for. But again, the challenge again is that even in terms of the current infrastructure, especially that links between at the national level and towards the police station, we still have some challenges in terms of network challenges, and also moving from analog to digital. So those challenges still are lingering in. And again, I indicated earlier in my opening statements in terms of the integration of the systems. We still have some challenges in terms of the integration of the systems, but there is work that is being done within this criminal justice system to ensure that the systems, for instance, that police use, the systems that Home Affairs uses, the NPA, and also the correctional service are integrated in such a manner that whoever sits at any point in time is able to source information. But of course, there is still some challenge. And again, with the rapid nature of the advancement in the technology space, we will forever have these challenges that perhaps technology moves at a very high speed than you would in terms of how decision-making are taken, especially in the space of government, where it may take a little bit of time to make decisions to adjust to the technology advancement, but recognition is being made in terms of making sure that we also then try and move with a level of understanding that we need also to accommodate new technologies as they come, because also the criminals also take advantage of the fact that any lag that we have between what we're doing now and what technology brings forward, then we need to make sure that we close that space, and technology will also then make sure that we are able to intercept and make sure that all the organized crime, cybercrime, and all those crimes that more rely on technology are able to be intercepted by the police. But again, the speed at which technology goes, some somehow also then it's a high speed that also the decision making doesn't really catch up with.
Yes. Tell us a little bit about, the effectiveness of these technological initiatives. What is it? Because many would argue that it doesn't really translate in terms of the crime stats that we are seeing. Crime is still rampant, corruption is still rampant. You are outlining to us right now that on a high level, there's this integrated approach between law enforcement, but it doesn't really translate into diminishing crime and corruption for the people, for the ordinary person. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Thank you. Look, I think as much as there is the intention to, which is a good intention and a priority of government to reduce crime, we also have to take note, be very cautious that as much as the intention is to reduce crime, if the trust relations between the police and the community increases, the likelihood is that also then the reporting of crime may actually increase. We may be looking at the current crime stats and say perhaps that is all the crime that is reported, but only to find that some of the crime that happens are not reported because of the trust relation. So we need to be just cautious in terms of whether the translation between what the police does in relation to the crime stats, as much as it's one of those indicators that would measure the extent to which policing becomes effective, we also have to take into consideration the fact that there are other interdependencies. For instance, how do we then ensure that the other stakeholders, especially in terms of the preventative mechanisms, the crime prevention and violence, the safety programs that for instance, local government has to come up with, the responsibility of, for instance, the Department of Social Development and all other stakeholders, because we have to be cautious in the sense that there are certain root causes of crime that needs to be addressed by other stakeholders, not only the police. Of course, the police are the overarching, they have the overarching responsibility to ensure safety, but there are other preconditions that would actually then assist in terms of reduction of crime. So the reduction of crime is not necessarily dependent on technology itself, but it's also dependent on whether other stakeholders do play their role in terms of their legislative responsibilities, which is why when we drafted the white paper on safety and security and currently finalizing the integrated crime and violence and prevention strategies, also need to try and ensure that the stakeholders are brought on board to ensure that they deal and address with the root causes of crime. Of course, technology itself cannot be able to eradicate crime, but it's just an enabler, something that actually brings about efficiency and effectiveness in terms of how the police does their work and moving into the fourth or perhaps the fifth industrial revolution. So technology should not only be looked at in isolation from the rest of the initiatives and the rest of the responsibilities that other stakeholders has to. So we do acknowledge the fact that yes, there are some challenges currently in respect of how we leverage on technology, but we also have to factor in the fact that other stakeholders also have to come on board to ensure that as a collective we deal with crime proactively, and proactively in the sense that we deal with the root causes, so that when the police come to respond mainly in the reactive environment, then they are able to execute effectively. And we will see a reduction in crime. But we may see a reduction in crime in the first instance, but as the trust relations between the police and the community increases, we may also then see a rise in crime. And that would not necessarily mean that the police are not doing their work. It's just that now people are trust the police that when they report crimes, then they would be able to to be dealt with. Thank you.
Yes. Elmarie, can you tell us a bit about the challenges that you faced on your end? I mean, yes, you, clearly the use of technology is yielding some positive results based on the pilots that you've run, but what are the difficulties? What are the people saying they're experiencing in terms of their relationship with the police and the use of technology?
Lucy, I think one of the difficulties that we've really run in when we started in 2012 and working with SAPS to develop this, the assumption obviously was that technology would be taken up by government, and it would be rolled out to those probably the most vulnerable people in society. So one of the challenges we experience is that with government processes, tender processes, it is still not today. It's endorsed by government, but it's still not today made available through government channels to most vulnerable people through some kind of a model. So I think from a Memeza point of view, it's always been up to fundraising, getting corporates involved and so on to make sure that we can get the technology to communities. But the uptake has not been there from a government point of view that says, let's work on a model where we can provide this to all households, for instance. So that, I think it's the main challenge that we had. Secondly, as a non-profit organization that we're doing this work, and I'm sure it's the same with the other non-profit organizations and yourself as well, technology innovation costs money. So I think a challenge always is to make sure that a lot of your time needs to be spent on generating and fundraising and getting investments to be able to better the technology, because technology changes so quickly and because you have to grow with the issues that you see happening on the ground. So I think for us, the main challenge has been, we've proven that technology works over the last 7 years. We've deployed almost 3,000 alarms in the field.
Hello?
I think we have lost Elmarie.
Yeah. Okay. Elmarie, we can't hear you at the moment, but I'll go to Mothupi, just from your perspective. I know you mentioned that technology is also being used to curb corruption, but can you just speak to this fact a little bit more and tell us how exactly it's been used? Because again, here, this is another area that we are receiving a great deal of whistleblower accounts from members of the public alleging issues of abuse of power, dereliction of duty, bribery, and so on and so forth.
Thank you. Yeah, this is another hot potato within the policy environment. I've mentioned that in my input that from a policy side, from the CSP in terms of policy development, we had developed the policy framework on the use of technology in policing, and we're currently finalizing the e-policing policy to respond to some of the challenges that are happening on the ground. Now, when I mentioned the manner, from a policy perspective in terms of how can technology prevent corruption, it's in the sense that there are certain aspects that has been occurring within the policing space in terms of the manner in which police conduct themselves that cannot be captured on live, so that it serves as a evidence to subject people to a sort of discipline and accountability. But even beyond the fact that there's still a challenge or a gap in that respect. If you look in terms of the functions or the execution of the oversight responsibility by the Independent Police Directorate, the IPID, you will see that there is a lot of cases that gets reported there, and in the main, you see that there is sort of police brutality, assault with grievous bodily harm, but to a lesser extent in relation to corruption. But the technology that can deal with that or improve or assist the police to actually keep corruption exists in there. You have what we call, if we have, which is what we are also advocating in the e-policing policy that we finalize, is the use of the body and dash cameras, so that, and the CCTVs. In some of the main cities, we have that, those CCTVs that monitors the movement of people, and then they will be able to catch up if police officers are, for instance, receiving brown envelopes, or they're doing something that is anti the duties that they're expected to do. We also then have the AVLS, which tracks the location and how the vehicles are being used. And those things are monitored on a live feed, so that we can be able to know whether a police vehicle, for instance, is in a place where it's supposed to be, and is deployed at the place where it's supposed to be. Of course, we still have some challenges in respect of the use of the dash and body cameras that would be given to police officers, but it's a proposal that we're making from a policy perspective to ensure that we have those systems that would assist the subs to ensure that they capture every activity that the police are doing on the ground. And in that way, if we know and the police knows that they have been monitored around the clock, then the highly likelihood is that the activities around corruption then would somehow automatically be brought down. But of course, like my colleague Elmarie indicated, there is a need for a huge injection in terms of the capital expenditure and operational expenses of all this. And looking now currently in terms of how squeezed the budget is, it will also then have impact in terms of to what extent do we advance. We're not saying that the subs have all the systems, but we're saying that there is a gap to improve. And we know the technology exists there. There are some of these technologies that are being used, but we can still leverage on those that are being leveraged now. But that, again, would require a huge capital injection. For instance, if we look, one would want a situation where even at the local level, the rural areas, like Elmarie indicated, that you have people who, majority of the people have access to technology. But we know that even in the cities where there was initiative to have, for instance, Wi-Fi, we still have a challenge in terms of connectivity issues. So those are some of the challenges that also fit into the gaps that we have in the policy environment in terms of how do we leverage on technology to fight corruption.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Before we go to our chat, and I'll bring my colleague Sabia in here. Elmarie, if you back on, can you tell us a little bit about mobilization? I mean, in your introduction, you did speak about how community members or neighbors would hear the cry for help. But beyond that, are there other innovations happening in the space in terms of mobilizing, bringing communities together, and actually making people more active? Because the act of policing does not only happen or occur when there's a crime in progress, but it should be continuous.
Definitely. Thanks so much, Malusi, and sorry for that break in connectivity. Yes, so it really comes back to basics, I think, from a mobilization point of view. What we have found really works from a mobilization point of view is working very, very closely with the Community Policing Forum. So, more so than with SAPS, the Community Policing Forums are made out of ordinary South Africans that volunteer, and they have got a lot of relationships on the ground with with the regular community. So from a mobilization point of view, using the community policing forums and partnering with them to enable them to help spread the message of how to use the technology, how the community needs to work together to make the technology work for them, has really proven to be, I think, the best method of mobilizing communities and informing communities on how the technology can help them solve the problems. So in short, I would think that, going back to basics, that is the most effective way of mobilizing communities with regards to the use of technology, is roping in the community policing ambassadors on the ground.
So is it more of a case of creating awareness than actually looking for how to make communities, well, at least, getting community members involved in the streets and active?
Yes, it is a lot to do with awareness. We do have, use various technologies like also mobile applications that help create awareness, train people on the technology, but the human interaction side of things you can never remove, even if we put a lot of technology into the game. And we find that awareness created through the foot soldiers that is already on the ground, which is the community policing forums, is the best method to get buy-in from communities to start using technology to safeguard themselves.
Okay. Sabir, are there any questions from the chat?
Yes, thanks. Firstly, there's a question from Greg who says, as an active serving member of the SUBS, we're currently utilizing our own dash cams and body cams. And linked to this is another question that SUBS is losing millions every year due to civil claims with regards to the issues mentioned. Why is the Secretariat not pushing for a rollout of dash cams and body cams? And just to add a little extra, is there perhaps resistance from police officers themselves not to use this technology? Mothupi, I think this question is for you.
Thank you. Sabat and Krach, I actually noted the question before. There is a push or a priority by government to actually, and it has been a discussion that has been in the public domain, even in Parliament for quite some time, in respect of issues around body-worn cameras, which as it's being considered as one of the instruments that will help in keeping corruption and maladministration by police officers when they execute their responsibilities. It is through the e-policing policy that I've indicated earlier. Amongst those instruments or systems that we advocate for in that policy, it's the use of body-worn cameras in response to this priority and as a response to trying to reduce the occurrence of civil claims or corruption. So we are in the right direction, but you'll remember that in order for government to roll out some of its priorities, we need to first have a policy architecture. And this e-policing policy that we're busy with is actually going to facilitate that process. But again, I just want to reflect that there are some advocacy rights groups who are actually raising the issues of the use of technology vis-a-vis the privacy rights or liberty rights. So those are amongst the issues that we're also looking at. And also now the POPI Act coming into place, we also now have to take into consideration those. We cannot just, we need to have a balance between the execution of policing functions and the liberty rights as enshrined in the Constitution. So those are some of the waters that we need to be navigating through this policy. And then it's expected that once we have this policy in place and approved, then it will then facilitate the extent to which the SUBS can go and procure and use these very important instruments.
Sure.
There is another one, if you may, Elmarie, that I've seen that it's not about reluctance. There is a move to go into this direction, but it's still going to require a lot of resources and time for us to get there. But the intention is there and it's seen in the policy. I've seen Advocate Gumede indicating that the advocate is working in that environment, and how does one get involved in that? Well, as much as we are more at the advanced stage of the drafting of this policy, but I wouldn't rule out if there is an input that you would want to make to us. I'm more than happy to receive that input. But I think because it's an ongoing process, likewise in the nature of technology is an ongoing process. So you have the liberty to also, from an operational point of view, link with the SAPS Policy and Standards Division or the Technology Management Services in that regard. You can also then engage them at the operational level. But those, and again, the use of drones, amongst others, it's one of those hot potatoes that we have, especially considering that if we don't necessarily have a good trust relations between the police and the community, it's going to be very difficult for the police to actually effectively use technology to execute their mandate and ensure that we create a safer environment. Thank you.
Thanks. Sabia, are there any questions for Elmarie?
Thanks, Mothupi. So Elmarie has been really great in responding to questions in the chat. There were some questions about if technology exists to track livestock. Some people are wanting to connect with Memeza. That's really interesting. But there is one other question. I can't remember who asked it, unfortunately, but it's about, can technology assist in tracking DNA and assisting with the backlog that the police are currently having with DNA testing and with the FCS units? I wonder, Elmarie, if you have any idea about the possibility of technology to do that.
Yes, I'm sure there is definitely technology that can do that. I know there's been a lot of work done around DNA that can be used to track items and livestock theft. DNA that you actually spray on and then can link back to this is actually your items. Around the DNA and the backlog, currently, unfortunately, as Memeza, we can't, or we don't help with it, but I think definitely there is a need for innovation around that, that very, very important challenge that we currently have.
Okay. No, thank you very much, Elmarie and Mothupi. I'm just going to allow you to make some closing remarks, and then we can wrap up today's webinar. We'll start with you, Mothupi.
Thank you, Melusi, and the panelists. Firstly, let me just thank the organization, Corruption Watch, extending an invitation for us to come and engage with yourself and others in the public space. We recognize the fact that yes, technology is important in ensuring that we improve policing and ensure that we reduce crime, as advocated for by the NDP and then the medium-term strategic framework. Technology, it is one of those aspects that would really assist the police in executing their responsibilities. And it is through the policies that I've indicated earlier, developed by the Civilian Secretariat for Police Service on behalf of the Minister, that would strengthen and facilitate the use of technology in a rigorous manner and thoroughly to ensure that as we move, as we have the challenge of reduction of budget that actually even directly influences the number of police officers that we have, then we can then use technology to actually then augment the capacity of the police to ensure that there is effectiveness and efficiency in the use of resources so that the people on the ground are able to feel safe It is through this very important mandate that if we are able to create a safer environment, then it will then ensure that we created an environment that is good for our social and economic development agenda to thrive. And once that is done, then it means that the treble challenges of inequality, unemployment, and amongst others are eradicated, and then we can have a very healthy and sound community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Elmarie?
Thank you so much. Yes, I think from our side, or from my side, I would like to actually thank government, because there's a lot of beautiful things out there that help organizations create technology that solves real challenges in South Africa. And we've done that through partnership with government right from the start. And from a Civilian Secretariat point of view, SAPS, all of those partners are very, very eager to come on board. I think currently where from an organization that manufactures the technology and is trying to get it into communities, where there is a block currently, is the policies and legislation around tender processes, and how do you, now that government has paid for the technology, how do you actually get it taken up by government and into communities through government processes? And I think from our side, that's where the next step, where we would like to see some real changes from a policy point of view, because otherwise we will never reach the majority of South Africa, and we will therefore never really make a national impact on crime. Only these small spots of work that we do where we see bettership in the management of crime. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Elmarie, and thank you very much, Mothupi, for your contributions. It was very insightful, but it's evident that there's still a lot of work to be done to curb crime and corruption in policing. And hopefully through the use of technology, we can make some advancement in that regard. Thank you as well to everybody who joined us for this webinar. The second in terms of policing, we'll be having another one later on this year. And please remember that the Memeza tool, you can access it on our website. It's www.corruptionwatch.org.za, and that's where people can report corruption, of course, to us as Corruption Watch. Until then, thanks to my colleague for co-hosting. We will meet again. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, and enjoy your weekend. Bye.
Thanks so much, Corruption Watch. Enjoy the weekend.
Thank you so much. Until we meet again.